Now, it's not often we get too many guests here on the GameSpot AU couch, but we do have a couple this time around. We've got Nevin and Rob from THQ. Now, we talk about punching each other in the office a fair bit, but
all the time.
A little too much. This gives us a chance to actually do that on the legit.
Yeah.
Guys, given the meteoric rise of the UFC franchise as a whole, were you surprised by the game itself and how well it did here in Australia and internationally?
Well, I mean, I was certainly, humbled by the success. I mean, 3.5 million is a great number, no matter what you're counting, right? But to some degree, I guess I wasn't surprised. I mean, I think you can attribute the success to the rise in popularity of the UFC. I mean, as you can see, obviously coming to Australia for the first time, fights globally around the world. MMA is expanding in popularity and taking sort of an exponential rise in terms of how popular it is. And I'd like to think as well that we put out a great product which was representative not only of the sport but the brand. Passionate, almost. I think the two kind of went hand in hand. And while I'm certainly humbled by a number like that, to some degree it's when you really think about it, it's kind of not a shock at all.
Yeah, now 2009 was a great base which you guys started off with, but obviously there's a whole lot more different fighting techniques out there and animations. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, certainly, you putting out the first product, we set out to make the best MMA game ever made in UFC Undisputed 2009, and it allowed us to create a base to work from there. And while we felt we got close to bringing the ideal of as real as it gets to players, I mean, there was certainly a lot of stuff that was still, needed to be added to the game, needed to be improved upon. And in the 2010 offering, we sat down this summer in an office and said, what can we do to absolutely crush 2009? We made the best MMA game ever. Now, how do we eclipse that, and how do we just put that game to shame? So everything from, reworking, various positions, quadrupling the number of strikes, tripling the number of ground animations, doubling the number of submissions. So many things went into the new product that didn't necessarily have to go in there. I mean, we did so much work that we didn't have to do, but we did it because we wanted to. We did it because we are, competitive as a team, within the industry, within the company, within ourselves, and everyone felt, this need and desire to, step up their game, and I think it actually shows in the 2010 product as well.
So there's some new fighting styles as well, like karate and Greco-Roman wrestling.
Certainly.
Does that mean that they grease up before they get in the ring?
I don't know about that. I mean, certainly, mixed martial arts encompasses so many techniques and disciplines, and to be fair to the sport and the brand, you certainly need to represent people as accurately as possible. These new fighting techniques that have gone into the game just help round out the fighters, and it also parlays into the philosophy change that we've taken with the 2010 product. In 2009, we had these archetypes of someone is a particular striking and a particular ground technique. So you'd have boxer, wrestler, Muay Thai, BJJ guy. Whereas this year, we've taken a more a la carte approach to it. You're able to pick specific fighting moves from each of these disciplines, and as a result, you get a much more accurate representation of these roster fighters doing things that you are familiar with them doing in real life, and not being sort of hindered by the sort of constraints of the previous system.
And now let's talk single player for a second. You guys are doing some really interesting stuff with fight camps this year.
Certainly. I mean, fight camps is a topic that's been brought up over and over again, and online, we allow you the opportunity to join essentially a guild or camp. Make you and your friends can create a camp. You can spar together online, and then you can fight against other camps, etc. So I think it's going to one of the most kind of appealing aspects of UFC as a brand, as well as the UFC Undisputed franchise, is this really in-depth and passionate, almost rabid community. And I think the advent of online fight camps is only going to help increase that and give people an opportunity to get what they want out of the game.
What sort of improvements are you making in the multiplayer, the online stuff this year?
Well, I mean, as the little that I can talk about, I mean, there's certainly we got to give PR something to do. Long campaign to go. But I mean,
recording this.
Yeah, right. But what I can tell you, I mean, certainly the aspects of last year's game, the exhibition fighting, player v player, the online fight camps as well. I mean, these are all improvements that went into the online. We've reevaluated how we've done matchmaking, etc. So again, we recognize that online play is a big aspect of current next gen games. We'll be saying next gen soon enough. So yeah, again, a lot of cool features went into the 2010 product that I think will add to the longevity of the game itself.
So obviously UFC has a massive base of fighters signed up to it. Have you guys expanded the roster this time around at all?
Well, certainly. The roster for UFC Undisputed 2010 has increased. There's now over 100 fighters in the game this year. Last year, you may remember that there were about 80 plus. So we've added fighters to each weight class, working with the UFC to pick the most relevant fighters for per weight class. And what's another thing that's important to note is that we've reevaluated how we created these fighters. Last year we built half of the fighters via our creative fighter system. So you had 40 sort of very high-res fighters, and the other 40 were kind of created with our creative fighter system parts. Now this year, all 100-plus fighters receive that same photorealistic treatment, which just adds to the depth and sort of immersiveness that the game presents.
Now, it's looking great.
Thank you.
You've also got some competition in the MMA space at the moment. What do you think is going to take UFC Undisputed 2010 just that little bit higher than maybe your competition?
Well, I think the strength of the UFC is not so much one particular guy or one or two dominant guys. When you look at the UFC as a whole, and the UFC is the #1 fighting franchise in the world. I mean, there can be no debate about that the best overall fighters in the world trying to fight against the other best fighters in the world fight in the UFC. That's not a subjective statement. That's just a simple fact of the current state of affairs of mixed martial arts. And nowhere else can you get the same experience that you would get watching a UFC pay-per-view than the Undisputed game. We use the same broadcast graphics, have access to their fighters. The experience is so similar down to the most minute detail. The same camera cuts that you see, the same presentation that you would see watching a pay-per-view or a TV experience, you'll be able to experience in the game. But rather than passively watching it, you're actively participating in it.
Okay, so obviously you guys have reworked the grappling system, and you've also brought that to the clinch as well. How are you guys, this time around rather, what are you doing to get new players comfortable with that system? Because it can be a little bit daunting at first using the analog sticks.
And certainly. I mean, I feel that, one of the things that we really liked about the Undisputed 2009 game was it had this aspect of being easy to pick up but difficult to master. And that was a dynamic that we felt was important for the new game as well. We've taken, steps to kind of increase the sort of what we like to think of accessibility. Last year, we had unique control mechanics for certain positions. For example, the clinch had a unique control mechanic to it, the ground, etc. So now the transitions and controller inputs that you execute for the ground game have translated to the clinch game, have now translated to the cage game as well. Again, making it just so that you don't have to rethink and reevaluate what you're doing in every position, that you just sort of instinctively react to what you're doing with a control mechanic that's kind of reinforced and pretty simple to get once you understand it.
Cool. So we're looking forward to strapping on the gloves and having a crack. When
Certainly.
Can people play this one?
UFC Undisputed 2010 will be available May 27th in Australia and New Zealand, and that's, I think, 2 days after the US release of May 25th on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, with the PSP coming out later in the year.
Nevin and Rob, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you guys.
Good job, Rob. Thank you.
Excellent.